All right, shalom, greetings to everyone. Welcome to Q2UA discussions. Q2A discussions. I'm just looking here. They must add a new feature in StreamYard. Sorry about that. It's just taking me a little bit of time to get things together. I apologize. I have to switch up the whole set, the whole studio as I work on looking at stories, as I work on other things here and there and there and here, and you know. These are just some of the things that I have to come through and do. Friday, I'm telling you, Friday to me is a little bit. It's not bad, but man, yeah, my body starts to kind of wear down on me. I know I'm not the younger man that I used to be in these YouTube spaces. Yeah, and I even have to be mindful and cautious of my voice usage. So it's interesting. And especially in this time with all these allergies and everything else. Oh my goodness. To me it feels like the weather has been oh, a lot more interesting, to say the least. To say the least. So, give you all some good news. The container has made it to its first leg of its triangular container trade ship. I hate to say that the way that I had to pose it. It went to one of the historical ports of the transatlantic triangular slave trade. It went to a region around uh what do they call him? Black Pete, I believe. Near that area. So it had to go over to Europe. Then from there, it's going over to Africa. This time, we're loading things over to Africa and not taking things away from Africa. Isn't that interesting? We're now it's a different scenario. We're here to support Africa and support the different things going on, their different initiatives. They want to do the initiatives. And as they're doing the initiatives, again, I have been talking about knowledge transfer and subject matter expertise. Because that is the day and age that we're in. Look, I don't care what you may think would be the case for AI, right? Well, AI says this and AI says that, and AI and AI. No, no, not necessarily. Yes, are we in an age of AI? Absolutely. I used AI yesterday to double check and check in on some things regarding the 14th Amendment and what that could mean. You know, the reality is that as I was talking to some folks earlier this week, that is, I'm going to say that are part of the African Union. The idea of us, and I'd say us as African Americans, I say us within the African diaspora and the contingent the contingency of African Americans. We're at a position that we've never been in before. We're in a position to where I'm going to say this, to where the legal threats of different thoughts, concerns, you name it, is on out there. Because remember, everything that we would say in terms of the worst case scenario was always in our heads. That will never be the case. That can't be the case. That should not be the case. What do you mean that that's there? What do you mean that again the willful ignorance was what was needed to create really the agenda necessary to support what they're getting ready to impose. And now understand it's going to be a lot more nuanced here. Well, we can't say that you're criminals. No, we're not going to say that there's criminality, right? So they're going to nuance it a little bit more. Well, we're going to say that we need to have you in some sort of a all right, here we go. Pan Mattoism. I think we had you on before. So here we go. I didn't even get started. So come on in. Let the games begin.
Peace, King. How you doing?
Salama, how are you?
Doing well, King. Thanks for having me up. And I try to keep everything brief. As far as, and I don't even want to zero in on Kenya. As far as just any African nation, any turmoil that's taking place, it's the obligation of the Africans to solve their problem peaceably amongst themselves. So if you are, and I'll say this in landing my plane, if you are an African living outside of Africa, but your African nation is going through turmoil and is war torn, with all due respect, you should feel ashamed for not returning back to Africa to help them solve their problem.
Okay, well that's fine. I like that you said that because here's also I'm gonna put this video on out here for you in the chat because I like that you say that's their problem. I'm not going to show this video, but I'm going to put this video here in the chat, and I'll give you the description of the name of the video. It is by Zach Mewakasa. I can't really pronounce his name. However, okay, so I like that you said that African nations need to be able to fix their problems. Well, let me ask you this, Pan Mattoism. How can African nations fix their problems when it's clearly Western powers and Western intervention that's creating those issues? So I believe what you're having is a very shallow argument of it's a great topical situation. Yeah, you need to fix your problem. However, if there are folks interfering with this, and what I just dropped is that bombshell. This is from Zach McQuest, but here's the reality of this. We've already seen this last year when you had what? Ukrainian soldiers fighting along who? Terrorists. Those terrorists happen to be what? Al Qaeda and ISIS efforts. But what? They're getting money from Ukraine to do what? To create instability in what? In Africa? Where does that money come from, Pam Mattoism? Because remember,
Yes.
Ukraine is
Oh,
basically
go ahead.
wiped on out. So where does that money come from for them to create problems in Africa?
Yes, and actually, I want to address that head on. You could have even mentioned AFRICOM, which is a U.S. military effort that is taking place in Africa. The point I'm making is, how will Africans stop African nations from being destabilized if these mass numbers move to the countries such as the Ukraine?
I couldn't even hear you. I think the either the AI, the voice
Are you
recorder,
able to hear me? Say that
what
again, brother. Yeah,
you're gonna have
you
to
unable to hear me,
yeah, you're coming on out. You're
brother.
coming in and out.
What about now? You're not able to hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Yes, and I'll make my response brief. The question is, because I actually agree that Africans should stop Africa from being destabilized by Western nations. The question is, how will Africans stop the U.S. from destabilizing them if these same Africans are fleeing to the U.S. and paying taxes to the U.S. government, which is using their taxes with the U.S. military and allowing the U.S. military to destabilize African nations?
Well, that's a great question. Here's what I've always said here at Q2UA. Part of the Q2UA enterprise is to be able to create critical infrastructure and economic development initiatives. And those initiatives will then create jobs, and then those jobs would then create an economy. So then that economy can then create financial vibrance when the currency actually recycles in the currency. And guess what that does? Regional currency cooperation, as well as other regional trade agreements, creates more economic vitality, which then creates people having more jobs, having more experience and exposure. With who? With our people coming in and providing. That was the whole point of knowledge transfer. That's the whole point of subject matter expertise. Because why? Because when you have the knowledge transfer and the subject matter expertise, then guess what you get a chance to do? You get a chance to manage your minerals and resources. And when you get a chance to manage your minerals and resources, then guess what? You get a chance to now have currency exchange. And that currency exchange is more of a currency inflow than a currency outflow. So you don't have to go to other places to chase the money when the money is there in those countries. And guess what you're doing? You're now having to go to those other countries to then get jobs. Because why? Because that's where the currency resides.
And shalom, brother Karis. And not only that, most of this protest is mostly younger generations in Kenya because 80% of them are, unemployed and there's no jobs. And the primary reason for these protests is because Ruto's administration is hiking taxes. And last year, the IMF suggested Ruto.
You cut out, Garth.
Hear me? Yeah, my mic keeps going in and out. But yeah, Rudo administration has, taken upon itself to listen to the IMF, a Western entity, to, combat their financial burden. But obviously, the people there aren't having it because they're already living in squalor. So, I mean, if your nation is being colonized by Western nations, what else are you going to do but go to other nations?
Brother, your mic is going in and out, brother.
Understand that. Just give me 1 second. I'll have to come back in and out. But yeah, it's not a one and done solution. It's more nuanced than they need to stay there and bear the burden. Obviously, colonialism has messed up the system there, has messed up their way of life and their pursuit of economic freedom. So it's just not like, oh, they just need to stay there and do what they need to do when they don't have the resources and the resources are already being pillaged. But I'm going to come back in.
And brother, I want to respond to the brother that was just speaking and the host. It'll be brief. Actually, that's exactly what Africans, particularly Kenyans, because that's the focal point. That's exactly what they need to do. They need to stay in their country and protect their resources from being pillaged by the colonists. Or in other words, if masses of Kenyans or masses of Africans continue to flee to the U.S., who will protect the African resources?
Well, there you go. I mean, you've now solved the equation of colonialization. that's that's neo-colonialization at its finest. If you don't know that you were involved in neo-colonialization efforts, you had to understand it took them a little bit of time to kind of figure out the game that was being played. So now you have all these other countries that started really with Burkina Faso. It started with Mali and Niger. It started with the creation of the AES, the Sahel Alliance, that then started to influence West Africa. It started to influence East Africa, South Central Africa, even parts of SADC with what Botswana and their president right now, their prime minister. Because why? Because if you now have a dissection of how the game is played, then now you are able to actually be effective against that game. A lot of people did not understand how the game was being played because why? It was very sophisticated. Not only was it sophisticated, here's the thing. If you don't know that the game is being played against you, then guess what? You're just going to do the game.
And just
Here's,
be a purveyor of it, and
yeah. I mean,
and then
listen, have we
ignorance
not
just
seen
keeps
that
on
here
begetting
in this
ignorance.
country? You know what I'm saying? Let's break that down. Have we not seen that here in this country when it came to us as African Americans, and most of us being descendants of those enslaved here on this continent, those brought over via the slave trade? Then what did you have? Well, you know what? We're giving them civil rights, but guess what we're going to do? We're going to open up the floodgates for everybody else. So then it diminishes any type of power or authority they think that they may have had, because now they give us all these other what? Constructs. Well, you can't say that because if you say that, that's not being very nice. That's not being very fair. That's not, did we not have that for literally the last 50, almost 60 years? Actually, I would say almost 70 years. Well, everybody else has a shot. That's right, because you're coming through and you're giving everybody else this lecture of how to treat us. And then when we're realizing that we're being treated the way that we're being treated by all these other groups that's quote unquote people of color, from all these other groups that are quote unquote of the African diaspora nature, they're coming through and they're saying, yeah, that we thought that was odd that during our naturalization process, during our immigration process, that we were told to denigrate black folks that are here. Because why? We were told that they're just lazy and they're just this. Imagine that. So let's think about that on their that prism, right? On that point of the prism over there. You won't want to be called lazy. Are you lazy, Pam Mattoism? Is anybody here lazy? But that's the construct that we have been told over generations. Think about that. They got told about that as soon as what? As soon as 1960s, because that's when they had the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, which then turned into the AU, the African Union, in the late 90s. Everything was fine and dandy until they lose control. You're great as long as you're continually at the bottom and they're continually at the top. You can come on over after we destabilized you, because why? Because, hey, that's the least that we can do. And it brings you on in here to be indoctrinated into this culture. And then you can go on back after you stay within your visa rights, your visa terms. And then you can continue to indoctrinate. That's warfare. It's actually psychological warfare. Warfare just isn't done on the concept of missiles and bombs and explosions. Warfare is done financially, psychologically, emotionally. It's been warfare on all fronts, because why? Because the dynamic is to be combative on every single aspect of your life. That's why when they say, man, how come they just can never leave us alone? Because they can't. Because they know what warfare looks like in a multi-generational war. They get indoctrinated of warfare in a multi-generational war. We just started to find out about warfare in a multi-generational war. Because remember, we have been indoctrinated from the point that we are breathing. on our own. The point we get out of the womb, and some of us don't even make it out the womb. Some of us die in childbirth along with our mothers. Because it's warfare. It's warfare that's played on two separate fronts: the fronts of the brain trust and the front of the resource trust. Can't have the brain trust be attached to the resource trust. Because why? Because that is then controlling of wealth and understanding and knowledge and what? And innovation. Chat GPT will let you know in a heartbeat all the inventions that African Americans did. They don't like that. Time to we tweak some things in Chat GPT. Okay, well, if that's how you feel, then guess what? I'm going to go on over to the continent and I'm going to utilize those resources, and I'm going to get that energy out of that rock that's going to continue to produce energy, because that's what that rock does. And I'm going to have a forever battery source that will not be tailored to what? To die on out, because when it dies on out, guess what you get a chance to do? You get a chance to have people spend more resources and spend more money. They create to create problems, because problems need to then have resources for money. So then the money continues to circulate. That's their whole process. I got to create a problem in your life. I can't leave you alone. Do you know that they're so good at warfare? Here's the reality of this. They're so good at warfare that they're constantly going to war with themselves. That's a warfare nation. Well, I guess Pam Mattoism dropped off. Thank you, Pam Mattoism. All right, he's coming back on. Yeah, so don't. Oh,
I'm here.
so we have to be careful about pointing the fingers of, well, it's their problem. It is their problem. You're correct. However, the problem actually started with us leaving the land, and that then became a problem of the sub-Saharan Africa, basically the continent. It became a continental issue because why? Again, the brain trust left.
And please allow me to address that. And everything I say will be brief. As you know, we didn't just leave the land. Many of the Africans actually sold us to to the Caucasians. So they
Okay,
have
well,
to.
if you're gonna come through with that talking
Oh,
point,
go
they
ahead.
Oh,
sold
come
us,
on,
they
man.
did that.
That's just such
Then we're just gonna, yeah,
a
we'll
moot
we'll
point.
we'll
That's not
we'll let
correct.
you we'll let
That's
you
not
pivot off
the
on that
truth.
one, or
But
I'll just kindly remove you. We already knew the concept of selling and not selling, in the point of a selling of forever. That was never practiced in the continent. Now, when they did sell, that was true to other nations. The concept was that they would be back after their indenturedness, because why? It was conquership.
Yes, but with all due respect, please do not get triggered when I make
I'm not
a
triggered.
factual
You're just
statement.
not telling the truth.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, you're being. That's
You're
being
just
Well,
being
silly. Just
you're
being
just
respectful.
being you're just
I,
being intellectually dishonest. I mean,
Yes.
we understand that other tribes sold other tribes, and that there was a contrived separation of those tribes prior to the Berlin Conference and after the Berlin Conference. And we
exactly.
understand that other kingdoms sold other people who weren't in their kingdom, or they sold
Exactly.
prisoners. But you understand that the Western European nations brokered.
Brother, your mic went out, but the point is,
Understand that. Can I
you
just
agree.
proceed?
Well,
No,
one
I
mic at a
don't
time.
agree with your. I
Well,
don't
brother, you
agree with
cut
your
me off, brother.
conclusion. I don't agree with your conclusion. I'm just giving the facts. I understood that we sold each other and other
Uh huh.
African nations sold other, but
Okay.
it doesn't stop there. I mean, that's just like
Well, did I claim it stopped there, brother? Let's just
Here's the
go
thing.
one
You
step
know,
at a
the other
time.
European nations, Europeans sold other Europeans. And guess what?
Exactly.
Guess what? Did those Europeans, were they sold in perpetual servitude? No.
no,
No. They were released after what? A certain
Uh
period
huh.
of time. What was
So
ours?
just go ahead.
So you have to understand, yes, what you're saying is being intellectually deceptive and
With this,
intellectually
with
dishonest.
this, I'm clear,
What
brothers, and we.
so
Well, go
understand
ahead.
the concept in the context of being sold into slavery, right? As a what? Prisoner of war. And that's what most of that was. It was warfare. But then who constructed and who crafted the warfare? Europeans did.
And just so I'm clear, I made one statement, and you actually agreed with me. Both of you did. You agreed that the African tribes sold our ancestors. So what is your
what I
point of
mean, sold our
contention?
ancestors. Our own ancestors sold each other. What are you talking about?
Exactly. So you agree with me,
No, I don't agree with you.
brother. You just agreed with me, brother.
No, I did not.
But what did I say?
Stop putting. You're just putting words into my mouth.
No, I didn't even put any.
You just said okay, thank you, because
It's over.
it's just annoying in the circular logic where he's just trying to get us to get emotional. He's saying don't get
Yeah.
triggered. It's just not a substantive conversation. It's
Mm-hmm.
just
Yep.
it's just unfortunately a lot of us are Hellenized still.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I was trying to be nice. I brought him on up here. But those are that's talking points that he got from white people. Understand, even the pan mulattoism, that says it all. I mean, just in my opinion. So
Absolutely. I mean, it's just like, I mean, he wants this, where he gets mad at, the Africans and, other people that he's literally spouting white supremacist rhetoric and he
mhm,
doesn't understand, like, there's nuance and there's history, or he just ignores it. So,
because
again,
those are red herrings that you have. Those are the red herrings. Those are the Hegelian dialects that become the deception. And you have to understand, look, I could every counter or every point he was trying to make was countered, and he knew that it was countered. You have to understand this. We're getting closer and closer to what they hate. People don't show up on this channel just because they want to support. Go ahead, Pam Mattoism. You want to be able to help out Africa? Drop $1,000 for the shipping container. Appreciate it. We'll see how you put your money where your mouth is. Make sure in that description you have the parentheses Pam Mattoism so I can shout you out. You want to fix the problem? That's how you fix the problem. Actions speak louder than words. Why don't you be active in that one? Because I'm going to tell you, talking on here does absolutely nothing. I talk on here just to give you all an update of what's being done in the background. Well, this and that. And I'm trying to tell you, I've been working and talking and conversing with the African Union. Well, Africans so that. Well, do you not think they knew that? Do you not think that they've been asking about us in these different forums? Why do you think that the U.S. State Department is literally trying to run away from Africa? Because they've been asking. About who? Not about white folks. So
yeah,
I'm sorry, but we deal with agency all the time. This
yeah,
is agents.
the absolute agency. I mean, and, you know, the Malcolm X cadence and all this, my brother, but you call us your brother, but you talk down on people that look like you, and you don't give them the benefit of the doubt, and you keep spouting white supremacist rhetoric that obviously isn't true, and you it keeps going out. It's like when my screen locks on my iPhone, it just does that. It's just quite annoying. But yeah, it's like you just don't want to. You just want to argue. You don't really want to have a honest conversation how we could fix this problem. It's just, it's their fault. Oh, it's the Africans' fault. Oh, it's let them do that. Blah blah blah. But again,
Well,
we're
if
all
that's
been affected.
happening here with us, what do you think is
Exactly.
happening over there in the
We're
continent?
all being affected by the colonizer. They're all going to come after us eventually and kick us out of this great Babylonian nation that you want to prop up and think that is your land or your portion. So be it. I mean, most of us with sense understand we have to come together. And again, since you want to continue to spout this nonsense that basically we don't have control of our image, so you're going to take on the image of what our captors gave to us, and you just keep on spouting it. So again, you do nothing to solve the problem.
Yeah, mulatto. What is mulattoism? Mulattoism is actually their system that they created as a buffer class. He's literally telling you what he does in his namesake.
Exactly.
So,
They used to do
like,
that in
come
the
on,
West
man.
Indies and in Americas. Mulattoism. They used to have different mixed children in the Caribbean, and then they put those mixed children over the African descendants to have a buffer class. Exactly like you said. Like this is history. I mean, again, these
I think,
it's
but you got to remember a lot of them think that we're intellectually lazy. They just really think that we're stupid. Unfortunately, it's pretty sad. And mulattoism, I would tell you, go ahead and get my book, The Rise of Africa, The Continent, the Diaspora and Bricks, and allow me to drop some, to give you just some nuggets of knowledge. And Pam Mulattoism, guess what? I would invite you to sign up to in the Neo Diplomatic cohort. You can do so at neodiplomacy.com. So I can spend about 1 to 2 hours a week with you and be able to school you on how to help fix Africa. I don't just come here and say, well, you know what? It's a problem. I'm trying to give you all solutions. I'm trying to say, look, what's happening in Kenya? What is happening in Kenya? What's happening in Kenya is that you have a lot of people that are now mad and frustrated because why? Because they understand that they have problems because they don't have solutions, because the solutions are not coming in their government, because their government is literally the ones that are creating the problems.
not only that, their government is literally deleting them without
Mm-hmm.
any impunity. It's kind of sad. And I believe what I've researched on this is they were trying, well, obviously they all showed out and stopped them from doing the finance bill that Ruto wanted to enact, that was at the behest of the IMF, and they failed. But then a year later, Ruto implemented something similar to the IMF suggestions, and they weren't having it. And then there's also young people who are protesting, and they're being kidnapped. And then there was this one young young brother who was he was basically making social media posts, and they took him into custody for those social media posts, and then they later on deleted him,
And he got deleted.
and
Yeah,
he got
and that's
deleted. So they're protesting that as well, and obviously now And now I've read that they are, some of them, have tried to storm the Parliament building because they're just fed up and had enough. So it's gotten that serious.
Yeah, give me a second. This is. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'll probably be away from my phone for a bit, so don't mind me.
Okay. I'm trying to share this screen. There's. Oh my goodness. Sorry, give me a second. StreamYard is just acting up. Okay. Let me get out of here. It is not like in this media. It is not like in this media. All right. Can you all hear me now? Whatever Reuters is doing, they're putting in all these add-ons, and it just makes things look just totally horrible. Okay, here we go. Let me get sound to this.
Kenya's interior minister on Thursday accused protesters of attempting to overthrow the government, a day after deadly demonstrations rocked Nairobi and other cities.
It was an unconstitutional attempt to change the regime of this republic.
Interior Minister Kipchumba Murkomen said at least 10 people were killed in Wednesday's unrest, when youth-led demonstrations were followed by looting and arson. Rights group Amnesty Kenya said at least 16 people were killed, all by gunshots, which it said were suspected to have been fired by police. Murkomen said police had been forced to hold back large crowds who sought to approach Parliament and State House, the president's residence.
It was terrorism disguised as dissent. There was no peaceful demonstration. We condemn the criminal anarchists who, in the name of peaceful demonstrations, unleashed a wave of violence, looting, sexual assault, and destruction upon our people.
One prominent figure in the protest movement told Reuters that Murkomen's remarks were an attempt to shift attention away from the real issue. Thousands turned out to the demonstrations, which were initially called to mark the anniversary of last year's anti-government protests. They were amplified by public anger over the death of blogger Albert Ojwang in police custody earlier in June.
So that's fair use. Fair use. Yeah, let me stop that. Wow. And they're really doing their best to try to throw in these. Oh boy. So the reality of what you see going on, that to me looks like a country that's kind of on its last legs. You will also have a lot of Western interference in that country, because the reality is that if Kenya goes, that's East Africa. That's East Africa. You still have some interference in Ethiopia from Western influences, not as much. Tanzania, they're trying to get out of their Western influences. But Kenya's a stronghold. And the reason Kenya's a stronghold is because the UK owns a lot of land in Kenya. So imagine if the government's overthrown, then all those folks from the UK that's there to oversee that land, they're going to be leaving also. A lot of things they don't want to tell you in terms of these politics, because they're not trying to get cut off. And Uganda, yes, Uganda is closest in BRICS. Uganda actually borders Kenya. And that then will create a lot of issues. Because that is a very big bridge linkage within the sub-Saharan states. I would honestly cautious that he may have lit the fire to then create the conditions for the overthrow. Because remember, sometimes they have the calculus of, well, if we say that it's a violent overthrow and this and that, well, some people say, well, yeah, we probably need to overthrow this. Because this isn't how a country's supposed to be acting and summarily executing somebody for what? For dissent, for speaking out against the government? Yeah, because then protests are going to be like, well, if that's the case, then we're next. Who can stop them? We're next. You have to look at what authoritarianism is, and that's not the case anymore. To me, Kenya goes down, then it won't be too long for Nigeria. They're able to utilize sects of tribalism, sectarianism, and things of that nature. That's how this thing worked. You're now seeing the byproducts of that centuries later. You want to know how we got sold? You want to know why we got sold? Through tribalism and sectarianism. Oh, we're just going to take them off your hands, and it'll secure our rule, or it'll secure your rule. Okay, well, when they come back, they won't be able to do anything because everything will be established. Yeah, they'll be back. They'll be back. Never. Do you think that they like to be in places where literally land is heavily unpopulated? We used to have thriving villages that are literally just relics of the past. Africa is heavily unpopulated for the amount of their quote unquote population group. The land literally became desolated. You know what that means? They got rid of their populations. Killed off through what? War and slave trade and epidemics. So if you have been literally in a deletion field, and you're able to get out of the deletion field for a little bit of respite, that comes with the cost of veiled attempts and white supremacy. Guess what? You're going to deal with the white supremacy. Okay, I can deal with that because over there, y'all trying to kill us so you can stay in and control the land. Because why? Because you got people that are in leadership that's creating the conditions as the puppet masters or the puppets. They're not puppet masters at by any means. To allow for mass deletion campaigns. And the reason that they're not going to say anything is because if they are forced to say anything, and if they're forced to take any type of responsibility, then they're forced to admit that they had a role to play in a person being unalived. This is what we see going on. That's the illustration of Kenya. Because why? Because that's illustrating now the literal fight on the continent. Regaining the control of the resources and ensuring that they can maintain and not just maintain, but to double down on their control of the resources. So, Brother Garth, if you'd like to add something. All right. Well, I'm looking at some other stories here in the background. Here's NBC. They're saying, let me put this on in here. Death toll from Kenya's anti-government protests rises to 16. Kenya's demonstrated in 23 of 47 counties across the country, calling for an end to police brutality and better governance. This is as of yesterday. The Associated Press says the number of Kenyans who died during Wednesday's nationwide protests over police brutality and bad governance has doubled to 16, according to the state-funded Human Rights Commission. Property was also destroyed in the protests that attracted thousands of frustrated young Kenyans. At least 2 police stations were razed down by angry protesters. Kenyans demonstrated Wednesday in 23 of 47 counties across the country, calling for an end to police brutality and better governance. Thousands chanted anti-government slogans, and the protests morphed into the calls for William Ruto to resign. Well, he's not going to resign. He's not going to resign. He's going to be overthrown because honestly, Kenya is an extension of British rule, British governance. Greetings, Brother Asaph.
Greetings, Brother Caris, and greetings, Brother Garth, and to everyone that's listening at present. Your geopolitical analysis is on point. I believe that the situation is not improving in Kenya. The youth are seeing what's happening in Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger and Tanzania, which is the adjacent country. And they have decided that they have had enough. But you pointed out quite a lot of the corruption problems in Kenya at the moment. Also, we have British soldiers stationed there who claim to be training. And what kind of training you need to do in Kenya? It's a satellite base because they know the geopolitical importance of Kenya, and if Kenya goes, it could, as you pointed out, rightly pointed out, would cause the rest of East Africa to tumble. And I believe that President Tinubu in Nigeria must be on antidepressant medicine and anxiety medicine at the moment, because if Kenya goes, which I believe that it's bound to happen, it's not a matter if and when. I believe that Ruto, as you correctly analyze, will not resign. The designer brand president will hold on to his position as long as he can. But when the populace rise up against a government in those numbers, what does that say about democracy? What does it say about the will of the people? It is showing you that the democracy that we have in Africa and in the Caribbean and Latin America is a facade. And as you pointed out in one of your broadcasts, whenever we get to vote for a leader, or a member of parliament or a representative, we are voting for either Pharaoh A or Pharaoh B. They're in control of either side of the equation. And we're not having that no more. And another problem which I would like to point out as well is that the Kenyan army has more structural problems than the armies in West Africa, because a lot of them are being kept by Ruto's side through financial incentives. And unless a junior officer comes up from the lower ranks, like Ibrahim Traore, and implements something, or the government collapses on its own because of the current insurrection, we're not going to see much movement. But as I see it at present, I think that Kenya hasn't got a long to go, and the British government and the key companies and all the companies and individuals that have a vested interest in the country and own land must be quite nervous at the moment. Your analysis is on point. And I would suggest to those people who are not cognizant of what is happening to read your book, The Rise of Africa, and BRICS, and see what the geopolitical outcome is for the Western countries. I've delved a little bit more into it in my second book, also sourcing some material and some views from yourself, which I've credited you for, but looked at the wider picture. And I do not see the Western hegemony continuing for much longer, because all the European countries are in debt, and they want to reclothe themselves and recolonize Africa by pretending that they're in partnership with us, which they never have been. Because if they wanted to be honest brokers, the first thing that they would do is to show their integrity by making it right by the diaspora that they've taken, and they completely bypass that, overlook us, and they want to overlook the population in favor of the current elites who are still in power, and also people that are educated in Europe and America who are joined to fraternities who will still continue their reign in power. So I do not see this system continuing for much longer. I'll shut up now, brother Karis, and hand it back over to you.
Yeah, well, exactly. And let me tell you, the reason that we have to be, the reason why we have to understand what is happening in the West, it's simply this. The West, again, I had stated this back in 2023. I said the West is collapsing on its own weight. It cannot do it. It is collapsing on its own weight. And now, when you have these European nations that are no longer able to create or provide or support these, I'm going to say, corrupted guidelines, then their regimes go down. To me, I believe Kenya is that regime in slow motion. They're trying their best, but the problem is, just think about it. They're having a resource issue. What's more important to me? The ideological, religious conjecture for that East Mediterranean nation and supporting them at all cost, or trying to support resources that we still need from Africa and supporting corrupt regimes with pulling those resources. And that's the question that they have to answer, because no matter what, whatever question and however they answer it, they still lost. They may, and I'm going to tell you, the most likelihood is this, most likely course of action. You have your most likely and most dangerous course of action. Most likely course of action is they're going to continue to support that Eastern Mediterranean nation at all costs. Because why? Because that is a religious structure. That's not just religious, it's mind control. You have to keep up with the mind control lie, especially in places like Kenya and Tanzania and all those places in East Africa. Man, when I tell you they roll around in buses, they roll around in trucks and cars with murals of white Jesus, of white Cesar Borgia, all on it. The moment that they're forced to paint over that and they have to scrape that off their windows, that's the moment that the European nations have lost.
And not only that, but we have pastors now who are avidly supporting that Mediterranean state over there, just because their welfare depends on them uh, collecting money from motivational speeches and entertainment. They don't have the broad breadth of educational backgrounds that we have independent outside theology, even though we know the Torah very well, and they do not have the broad base of actual skills that we have. And the moment that their religious hegemony, I would say, starts to collapse, and the arguing among themselves about which doctrine is correct also collapses, which is interconnected to the people in that Mediterranean place, we're going to see some very critical structural changes in the hierarchy within our community. and it may, it may transpire, brothers and sisters who are in the chat, including Paris, that the
Brother
European,
Asaph, can you
yeah, that
we really hear you?
can you hear me? My internet is going in and out, and I can hear it as well. It, as I said, it may transpire that we may be approached by some of these Western governments to facilitate them, us doing business and negotiating with the African diaspora. Remember that you heard it here first. But I think that these are things that are coming down the line, which are probably months or weeks away.
Here's the thing. That would sound very. That's very. That would be understandable. But I'm gonna tell you how white supremacy works. It's an absolute no. They will collapse. They will rather suffer a heart attack than to have to ask black people anything. So no, it would not. What they would do though, they would definitely drop, I would say, some nuclear laden materials to destroy some of the land when they leave. The
Do you
moment
think they would go that far?
oh yeah, they will. Yes, they will. They'll drop some depleted uranium. They'll drop some sort of a dirty bomb to kill off as many as they can before they leave. See, when you see that, that's when you know it's over. Yeah, we're never going to really be able to talk to them anyway, so just destroy as much as we can destroy, and then as they're reconstituting, we're reconstituting. It is scorched earth, Cindy. That's correct. No, they won't negotiate. They won't do anything. Look, when they leave, they're going to burn things up. Now, what I believe what will then happen is then you're going to have the African Union then reach on out to all the other countries, i.e. Russia and China, because Russia and China aren't going to play that. Well, you're scorching that up. Those are some of the goods that we needed and we were negotiating, to fairly compensate. That's what's going to end up happening. Now, will it be en masse? No, but you already see that happening in Burkina Faso with Mali and Niger. They cannot have any more losses in terms of revenue.
I never looked at things that way, but it would be shocking to think that they would go that far.
Mm-hmm. Look, because you want to know why, I'm going to tell you this. The reason that I know why they're saying that, what are they saying? Here's what they're saying here in the West. Prepare for what? For famine. Prepare for what? For famine. Why would we need to prepare for famine? Well, because number one, you're not really getting the support of the crops coming through and being processed the way they need to process, i.e., you don't have any more people picking the crops like they used to. And number two, you don't have as many produce coming from Africa that they used to, nor South America. Remember, they were trying to bully everybody, especially the African nations, on the, they're bullying them on the high end. Hey, you need to do this and do that. And they're like, nah, forget you. We're just going to work with China. That's why China now has a gold vault. You want to know why China has a gold vault? Because they're putting the gold in there, and then they're going to back currency based off of the gold. That spells disaster for the United States. So now they're going to say you're no longer a reserve currency. Because now everybody's putting their gold reserves into China, and guess what? That's creating a facilitation for trade via BRICS. Remember, BRICS comes up with a new, or the actual currency denominator, the commercial currency denominator for their BRICS pay system. Remember, they tested out their BRICS pay system back in October last year from the 22nd through the 24th over in Kazan, Russia. Now this year, they're going to go through and do what they planned. But then remember, you're going to have more purchasing power with these countries that are saying, nah, forget your dollar. Do you know what my rate is compared to what you all are trying to say? You may be $1, or $1 may be 7 yuan. $1 is 7 yuan. I've been on those little Alibaba apps and these different apps. The moment that they flip that to gold, okay, here's our standard, here's our gold standard. This is what we're trading in. If you don't have anything here, then your dollar is going to be based off of this gold count. Your dollar is going to be $15 for yuan. Your dollar could be $25 for yuan. Look at that flip.
It will mean that the United States and Europe will be facing intolerable levels of inflation.
They will be facing not intolerable levels. They will be facing hyperinflation overnight. Overnight. Can it happen overnight? Absolutely, it can happen overnight. Because then, what do you have in Tanzania? The T shilling. Hey, we'll have parity on a T shilling. And they'll say, well, but what's that going to do for Europe and everything else? And they're going to be like, I don't care. I don't care what it's going to do to Europe. I don't care what it's going to do to US dollar. What are they going to do? Fight everybody? Or are they going to declare a world war against everybody? No, the hammer can't take it.
That's not possible.
Bingo, the hammer gets broken. The hammer is about to be broken.
Sorry, Dave.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was about to say also, you're talking about hyperinflation. They're already talking about digital sticker prices at supermarkets where the prices of goods and food and all that stuff will be fluctuating based on whatever they want to deem a priority or deem based on, availability. And they're talking about government-run supermarkets already. They're proposing that in New York.
They're going to have to. And, they're getting mad because they're like, oh, well, that's going to be socialism. They're going to have to do it. They're going to have to do it. And then what they'll end up doing is we can't take any more people flooding into this place because we only projected for this. The moment that happens, there has to be solutions in place. There has to be people on the ground to help support what's happening here and what will be happening here in the United States. This isn't fear doctrine. This is actually called preparation. Them folks go over and they say, hey, I'm gonna be prepared because I trust in my flesh. Our preparation is because we have a pipeline of working with our brothers and sisters on the continent. We've already had things established on the continent to bring over dollars. Yeah, we're going to be that third world country, that third world nation. to where those of us that are blessed to be working on the continent will have to help our brothers and sisters survive here so they can be able to make the trip out of here. Oh man, you actually have real dollars. How'd you get that? You have real cash from other countries.
I never thought of it, but you're right. I never thought of it that way.
Man, you better be careful taking that currency to the bank. Somebody can rob you. And this isn't hyperbolic. This isn't just, oh, we're going to scare people. No. Hey, I want to buy this, this, and this. How much is that? Well, that's going to be about $600 USD. $600? I'm only getting a loaf of bread, some milk, and some eggs. Are you kidding? Man, have you seen what this inflation looks like? It's ridiculous. What can I get for a 20,000 or 10,000 T shilling? What can I get for a 20,000 T shilling? Oh, you got 20,000 T shilling? You know that rate is like, it's almost 50,000 USD. What? At that time, that really won't be anything comparatively speaking. It'll be like $100. More than likely, it'll be like $100. But if everybody's broke and everything has price controls and rent controls, you have to control something. What happens when you have price controls and rent controls? You ain't traveling anywhere. Because why? Because you can't afford to leave. You will not be able to afford to leave. That is how they're trying to develop this captivity. All right. Well, you all have some money. You all have some funds. Now, nobody's getting any money and no one's getting any funds. Says who? Says who? Shoot, man, we got some projects going on right here, here, here. We're getting things started right there, there, there. Get out of here. That's what my job is in the background. Not just to come on in here and talk on Q2UA, not just to come on in and talk on Covenant Awakenings, but my job is to make things happen and actually happen. Folks see what's coming down the pipe. Trump did not hide that. Folks realize everybody's going to be broke. Unless you are a tech oligarch, unless you have developed some sort of technocracy system that will be recognized by the oligarchy, you just going to be poor like everybody else. The container wasn't just a container where it's like, oh yeah, here it is, and we go from there. No, that's en route, and it's still opening up doors as it's literally en route. To have something opening up doors while before it even gets there is purely amazing. Because it needed to happen. It had to happen. This had to occur. I don't know what could be happening in the next 3, 4, 5 weeks. Maybe they did this because of what's getting ready to happen with BRICS. Who knows what the next hotspot's going to be? Is Cuba going to be the next hotspot? Will the U.S. declare war on Cuba? And they can give you any type of shallow analysis. Well, the Cubans were getting ready to take back things, and they're going to try and take back Florida because of the Gulf of Mexico turn into the Gulf of America and blah, blah, blah. You never know. In my calculus, I would plan for that. Okay, BRICS pay is up and it monetized. In my strategic analysis and planning, I would say, yep, we're going to have to invade Cuba. As Cuba being part of a BRICS alliance, BRICS partner, yep, time to invade.
What you're saying makes sense because the Eastern Caribbean, I don't mean like Jamaica and Barbados, are tied to the US dollar.
Yes.
Anchored their currency to the US dollar. So that means that if the US doesn't do anything, then those are going to reevaluate their currency positions and completely come out of the US dollar as well as the other African countries and South American countries that are tied to the US dollar. So your analysis is 100% correct.
Mm-hmm. Because why? Because Cuba will automatically leak over to Haiti. Haiti will then leak over to Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic, that is Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico already done said that they want to actually go to be back under the auspices of Spain because they got treated better. You then have the Eastern Caribbean along with other Virgin and British Isles that would utilize and pay for goods with BRICS. They'll find a way. And then they'll float those ships from Cuba over there. Essentially, the Eastern Caribbean, even under Venezuelan capacity, Central and South America would really be cut off. Mexico would say, hey, we're still doing port trades with China, and China's under BRICS, so sorry. We're going to go with the BRICS system. It's real money. I'm sorry, it's real money. But we'll have a system for you all. But remember, here in the United States, you're going to be paying a little bit more because you ain't got no dollar. We'll still trade with you, but you won't be able to afford it. Your goods and your services will be a lot more expensive. Could the U.S. survive that? Especially right now. What do you think is happening with the dollar? Why do you think the dollar is having these heart attacks? Why do you think these analysts on over here, Ray Dalios and everybody else said, well, the dollar could be dead within 3 years? And 3 years? 3 years? No, the dollar is on hospice. The dollar's in hospice in less than 3 months. In less than 90 days. Mark my words. Oh, Brother Karras? Yeah, Brother Karras said it. In less than 90 days, the dollar's in hospice. By June 30th. And you want to know why I say by June 30th? Because guess what that is? That's FY26. That's fiscal year 26 for the U.S., for the United States budget. You will see what gets funded and what doesn't. How did the debt just blow up to 50-some trillion dollars?
That's crazy because if I'm my
Is
recollection,
that where it is
it's like
now, Brother
it's,
Paris?
it's
The
like I thought
debt
it
is
was at
at
30.
37 trillion. The
Yeah, I was
reason I
about to
say
say 30
how did the
something.
debt get blown up to 50-some trillion? Because think about this. Everything will become about at least 30% more expensive. At
Are
least.
you
And
Are
I'm going
you
to say the reason that you had that is because remember what the average was. Who even said the average? Remember what they said the average on the tariffs would be? What, 30 to 40%? Why are they trying to do 30 to 40%? To offset, honestly, BRICS' introductory pricing. Remember, they had that last year in Kazan, what they were trying to set the pricing at. So if you're on BRICS, you're going to enjoy a 33% margin. Well, that's better than the pound. That's better than the euro. Okay, sign me up.
is that taking into account the big beautiful bill? I mean, I have to read what that bill is, but I know there's some financial implications once that bill is passed because it's eventually going to get passed.
Yeah. Here it is. Because Brother Fast Nickel saying this, I'll if you want to jump on in, Brother Fast Nickel, I have the link pinned in the chat. But that's exactly what this is, and he states that's exactly what they are on. Why they are on board for stablecoins. Stablecoins is what is being used to move the debt into. So they're going to move the debt. The problem is when they move the debt, the dollar will literally be worthless unless you have other currency, unless you have other relationships that can tie you to wealth, or not just wealth, but other transactional accounts on the continent. Brother Garth, remember what I said during that meeting when you and I had just gotten off the airplane? Remember what I said? And it said, remember what I said when Dr. Ericana
You're talking about
and
that idea or
yes,
something else? Because
that idea.
oh yeah, I remember that idea. Yes.
Now you understand why it's more and more plausible. You don't even have to do it via USD. Come on.
So instead of using USD, you would use crypto or
No,
your.
you'd use the derivative or the currency of either that regional currency. Hello, the regional currency. Remember, and I asked my contact this last week. I said, are you all working on the regional currency? Because I want to find out where that's going, especially with the bank. And he told me, he said, well, we're still working on that. That's been proposed. We're still working. See, a lot of the things that's there, they're still working, but they need our expertise to make that a reality. You get what I'm telling you? It sounds good, but you actually have to have the people with the expertise to give you the understanding of how you do and how you work with secondary markets, being able to have funds rates, being able to have transaction settlements and other processes, being able to understand how to process those transactions, and then be able to understand your rate of exchange based off of the aggregate. I can go and explain on and on. It's a lot.
So
It'll
in
start hurting
layman's
people's
terms,
brains.
it's more sophisticated, more functional, proficient bricks. I mean, not bricks, Swift, like Swift type thing, but it's basically based in like the African and the African diaspora, basically off that framework, but something different, but a lot more proficient and beneficiary for us. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
None of this stuff is going away. They are just retooling it. They're remapping everything.
Mm-hmm.
So when I did the presentation with Brother Yakoba, and I at the very beginning, and I played the 5-minute clip of David Sachs talking about the Genius Act.
Mm-hmm.
The Genius Act, he said it. It's being backed by the dollar and by U.S. Treasuries. Well, U.S. Treasury is only debt, and like Brother Karis just said, the U.S. debt is 37 trillion. The
Oh
next, the next,
man,
the
hey,
country behind it
sorry,
is
brother.
China, and they're only at 15 trillion.
Sorry, brother Pastor.
Mm.
Prophet Templeton, I have your information. Please email me. Please email me. He says his as a retired Fed Reserve analyst. I would say you're accurate, but add to those woes Africa withholding minerals, doubling or quadrupling prices. Please email me, Prophet Templeton. I I got you. I think I have your somewhere around here. Please email me. Brother, please email me. All right, sorry. Go ahead, brother Fast Nickel.
So here's the scary part. So I was doing some research, and one of the things I talk about is the ISO 20022, which goes into effect here in the US July 14th. Well, ISO the ISO 20022 is just one of many ISO conformities.
Mm-hmm.
So with the Genius Act, the Clarity Act, the Stable Act, the Market Structure Bill, and the big beautiful bill that Trump calls it, all of these bills are being used to circumvent the Constitution. So what's happening is I didn't notice until I did my research. So what they're doing is, because every country has laws, like the US has the Constitution. What
Mm-hmm.
they're doing is all of these they're using blockchain as the reasoning to make sure everything is conformed and everything is legal. They give you the legal jargon on the surface, but everything is going to fall under the jurisdiction of the United Nations.
Mm.
I
Why
just
is
found
that?
all this out. I just found this. So now it's no longer, as a U.S. citizen, you're no longer going to have the ability to say, well, that's not in the Constitution, because nothing is going to live under your country's laws.
What does that mean, brother Fast Nickel?
That one of the things that means is that they are they make their rules, and you have no more rights anymore.
Yep, we got sold.
Yeah, we did get sold. We got sold.
We got sold. They got sold. And now that really does align with 2nd Esdras 15, verse 38. And now understand who will win. They're not just going to win on the battlefield, they're also going to win politically. They're going to win in the UN. They're going to say, hey, everything is just. And with everything being just, the U.S. has to pay back.
Yes, because here, so the thing to keep in mind, in Europe, they have something called MICA, and so everything has to fall on the MICA rules. So just to think about it, remember everybody was complaining that Apple would constantly change their wires, their ports, and people would have to constantly get new cords, whereas that wasn't the case with Android devices. So Europe made Apple standardize everything. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what's happening with all of these bills and laws that they're coming out now. They're standardizing everything so that we are under a global system, exactly like the Bible talked about.
Look at that. Look at that.
I mean, it's coming together. I mean, most people don't see it because the unfortunate part, it's no different than being in a frog in water. No one is seeing it until the water boils, and now it's too late to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Like Brother Todd said, you're a global citizen now.
This is why, even though they want to have all this in place by 2030, you really only have 6 to 18 months at max to be able to get out.
To be able to get out. I think the dollar is dead within 90 days. I believe, though, we'll be okay. There are mechanisms that are at work and that are at play in the background that will be able to provide substantive, however you want to call it, support.
So the dollar will not be dead. It may be dead in the form that we know it as today,
Yes.
but through stable coins and everything going to blockchain, it's not dead.
It's not dead. It's on an even more make-believe system because now remember nobody's buying the United States' debt.
Correct. And so through stable coins, now they will. So this is why they're tokenizing everything.
Well, here's the thing. Who is they? If you're not
The,
if you're no
the
longer buying
technocracy,
exactly. Who's buying what's technocracy is that? That's the billionaires.
the
That's
billionaires,
the elites.
the
What are
10
they
kings
doing?
without a kingdom.
That's yes, that one. And what in all these nations, this kingdom has been sold to them, but I could say probably you may see a lot of Chinese influence in here. You're gonna have to. When people see that, when people start to understand, when they start seeing billboards and other things in Chinese, when they start seeing commercials in Chinese, when they start seeing a lot more ads on YouTube and Facebook and Google in Chinese, or in other languages. So now you're starting to see how you will be basically influenced to accept this new system. Oh, this new system isn't bad. It's all good. It's more fair. We have been doing things very unfairly, and now we want to make things fair. But then who is able to operate in that system? What then comes through with those transactions? You're going to be able to have bricks within that system. Bricks, I guarantee you, will have its own coin to buy different things, but I don't think that you can purchase bricks coin.
So everything is going to run through stable coins, and you will have to not anybody just can't create their stable coin.
Mm-hmm.
It'll have to be so like they've allowed PayPal, and anybody who knows who the founders of PayPal, it's David Sachs, who's under Trump, it's Peter Thiel, and it's Elon Musk. Those three founded PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
So
but I'm
so
gonna
you'll
say
see big conglomerates. Like anybody won't be able to create their own stable coins, but the giant conglomerates will.
exactly. But you'll start to see that monies will operate because it will be like this. Monies will come in to purchase from BRICS pay system, but nobody here in the United States will be able to pay for anything outside of this system. Do you get what I'm telling you? You're basically in a closed environment. People can come into the closed environment. People can operate within this closed environment. They'll be able to leave this closed environment. We won't because our closed environment will be through the stablecoin system.
Yeah, but that's the value of XRP because it's a bridge currency. So what'll happen is in the US, you'll have to use the US based stable coins, but if you go to Europe or somewhere else, if you'll have to just convert it to the coins of that region.
And the reality is if that's the big deal is if And
If what?
understand XRP is two different forms of XRP. You have your XRP what? US, but then you also have your XRP ledger that's also globally.
No,
Your
the XRP ledger is different. The,
is
the
different.
ledger is just your ledger where you're seeing transaction. There's XRP and then there's RLUS. There's USRLD, which is the Ripple stablecoin.
Hmm. Yeah. So the whole reality of this is that in order for this country to survive, people will be able to put into this country to grab whatever assets are in this country. However, the country won't really be able to, go on out there on some of these apps and purchase whatever they'd like to purchase on, whatever eBay or Alibaba or other things. They'll just say your currency is no longer accepted, or or these vendors no longer accept the currency. And then people are going to be scratching their head like, well, I got money in the bank. Why can't I buy anything?
So that's why it's an. So for instance, right now you see the price of crypto. Anybody can generally afford it, but there's going to come a time soon within the next 6 to 18 months where they're going to flip the script to either raise the prices or shut it off so people can't buy crypto.
Come on.
So that if you didn't buy crypto today, you're going to be in trouble because they're gonna jacket up the price to where you can't afford to get in. Mm-hmm. This is part of them controlling you.
Yep. Unless you have a financial interlocutor that can then support your efforts. And to me, that's not going to come out of Europe. That's not going to come out of the United States. That's not going to come out of the West. That's going to come out of Africa because Africa will be able to have the resource component. Oh, you want to do it like that? Then I'm going to shut off your resources. Well, no. We're going to make a separate mechanism. Watch. That's what they always do. That's what they do. That's what they are doing. That's why China's opened up its vaults. That's why Russia had taken some of Burkina Faso's gold. This is why you have basically a tunnel into that system. There's always a tunnel, partly strong, partly weak. There's always a tunnel. Are they going to try to have a complete shutdown? Absolutely, they can. But they can't have a complete shutdown because they still have to utilize resources.
So to your point, right now, when these big companies like a BlackRock buys a couple of $1 million worth of Bitcoin, but yet it doesn't affect the price of Bitcoin, is because they don't buy it through the traditional methods that us retail buy it. They buy it what's called over the counter, so that they go around the system so that it doesn't affect the price. So this is to your point of where the elite or the people above our pay grade are able to do things around the system.
Yep.
Because think about it, just yesterday or the day before yesterday, because today's Friday, so Trump signed off on the bill. So now Fannie Mae, Fannie Mac have agreed that they now see crypto as an asset. So now you can actually get a mortgage to buy a house with crypto. Mm-hmm. But in the past, here was the problem. So the problem is, if you have $100,000 worth of Bitcoin and you want to use it to buy a house, the minute you take that and bring it into your bank, now you've got to pay 35% capital gains tax.
Yep.
So now that 100,000 becomes 70,000, right?
Yep.
But what they're doing is, and this is something I brought up on Brother Jacoba's show, is what the plan is. The only thing they're doing is they're just working out the kinks. But the plan is, anyone who has crypto, you will never have to sell it. You can loan it out or take a loan against it, so that you never have to sell it, and you can let it work for you and make money. If you want to buy a house, you just loan your Bitcoin to get that house, but you never have to sell it.
Beast system. Why? Because your cryptocurrency is going to be, your token is going to be Internet of Things. What's going to be your currency? The currency is going to be you. Why do you think
Correct.
they want to have all these different digital trackers and everything else? Because you're the currency, hands and feet. You're the digital
Hey,
currency assets.
what was it Wednesday I was gonna say FDR, Kennedy. I forget his name. What's Kennedy's name? The one that wanted to run against Trump.
Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yes. Yesterday or the day before, you heard him say everybody needs to have a Fitbit so that they can track your health, etc.
Mm-hmm.
That's all part of the tracking system. Like anything that they mandate that you have to have for them to monitor, you don't want it.
Yeah, they're now looking at you get different incentives based off of programs at your work for employee assistance programs and things of that nature. The more you're active, then they'll give you gift cards.
No different than when they were trying to incentivize you to take the cookie.
Yep.
Listen, they don't ever give you anything. Anytime they dangle a carrot, you know it's not for your best interest.
Mm-hmm. Man, yeah, this is crazy.
It's getting very scary fast.
Yeah, Zoomer Doomer is saying here in the U.S. or UAE, things are closed system and are running on stable coins. Mbridge is the institution, business to business transactions. Mbridge is.
Yes,
and Clear
and UAE is big on crypto.
Yes, because why? It's UAE, Singapore, Hong Kong, I think, and there's another one you may know. That's the BIS. It's the Bank of International Settlements that they're trying to have to replace SWIFT.
But they're not going to replace SWIFT. They're using XLM and XRP and a couple of other coins to make it to they're not getting rid of it. They are retooling it.
Well, here's the thing. Everything will always have a side by side until they cut off the old system. Isn't that how that goes? You have your mainframe systems, and then you have your cloud systems. And then when cloud is cheaper, why are we keeping up with these mainframes? They shut off the mainframe systems because everything's now been converted to cloud, and now everybody's on cloud. It's going to be the same thing that you're going to have. Yeah, it will start there, but then, the more capacity, then it starts at 50-50, or it gets to 50-50. And then, there's now more people doing Mbridge or doing bricks than it is in the old. So the more and more that they do it, we only have 2% of people on this old system. Hey, we're giving you a shutdown date.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. And this is not financial advice, but this is why I've said to everybody, you want to own at least one quant, because quant is the ISO coin that they're using so that the old system, the old legacy systems can be a part of blockchain.
Mm-hmm. If you can drop that link for the folks in the chat, Brother Fast Nickel.
What link? You mean quant?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Everything is tied to money.
Everything is
Money.
money.
Yep. And the money is a representation of the resource. Resource valuation. What do they call it? Look at this. Quant tackle. Quant tackle. Are you kidding? Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. So you're gonna have to put that on in there so folks know and can get that information. So it looks like it's a quant fund or a quant mutual fund.
No, I put the name is Quant, but I put the link to Coin Market Cap where you can see about Quant.
Okay. Put
But
that in the
here,
private chat for me, brother Fast Nickel. And
oh, in the private, okay.
yeah, because I don't think it's going to allow the links. Let me do this. Yeah. Okay. Let me go ahead and get that link added. Yeah, because this show started off a little rough, and then it got better over time. So yeah, brother Fast Nickel, if you want to put that link in the private chat so that I can get that over into the chat.
So I put it in the chat because I'm doing it from my phone. I, I don't think it shows private. It just shows me.
No, the StreamYard. So you have to put it in
Yeah,
StreamYard.
yeah, I did. Do you see it?
Let me see. Let me make sure it pops up. Yep, I got it. Let me go
Okay.
ahead and copying it right now, and let me put this here in the chat for everyone. Please go ahead, take a look, see what is happening, see what's going on. See, there are a couple different things that I had been talking about in the background of this scenario, this situation, in terms of being able to support the African diaspora, not just African Americans, but the African diaspora. But it would particularly be a case with the African American first, because that is really your design, your design mechanisms. I I do have to say this. I have been working this problem set in earnest for about a little over a year. And I've been working this problem set since when Garth and I landed in Burkina Faso. There is an ability to get some things taken care of. That's why I tell people, like, don't worry about this. Don't worry. The Most High literally already has an awesome plan set out. He really does. Now, the question is going to be, when people see what's happening, will they sign up or will they be skeptical or whatever, however it is? No, it's not going to be a mark of the beast system, but it will be something that will allow people to get around and do things and really be able to have the mechanisms to up and leave when people realize, man, this isn't worth it being here. I might as well take what they gave as this. I can't say what I want to say. I can't. I can't talk about what I want to talk about because this was a discussion in front of a Ghanaian billionaire and Dr. Ericana herself and some other folks. And I just pray that it did not get lost at that time. But right now, it is more and more dire to accomplish what it was that I spoke out last year. I shared that with some of you all in Q2UA in the Wednesday night meetings. I shared that with some of you all in the volunteer meetings. It sounded crazy last year, but now it's not crazy. Now there's really solutions that's coming upon us that we're now able to support these particular endeavors. But with that, Brother Fastnickel,
Yes.
any questions, concerns, thoughts, any final comments, parting comments?
You know, July is the fireworks because it's the it's the birthday of this country, but there's going to be a lot of fireworks starting in July, um, all around the world. So just pay attention because they only allow you to see what they want you to see. So you have to go use alternate methods if you want to see the truth or what's really going on. But just pay attention and be prepared.
Be prepared. All right. Thank you, Brother Fastnickel. Brother Fastnickel does have his show. He has his channel. Please go ahead, visit that channel, subscribe. Um, we do not provide any type of financial advice um, here on Q2UA. And so yeah, so with that, sorry, I usually close the chat down after 10 my time because I have to get to other meetings. So if you're there in the background and things of that nature, yeah, I only have a little bit of time. So that's why I said final comments, final thoughts. Next week, we'll have some more. Things will be definitely looking interesting. The show, I pray that the show did not drag. The show was actually relatively interesting. And now you understand their solutions. I don't like to just talk about problems. I actually like to give more solutions than problems. But I have to talk about the problem because we understand the problem. Then you understand how you have a solution for that problem that works, that's ethical, that's moral, and that's legal. Because you want to have something that is righteous. Because the Most High always gives us thought and witty inventions. He does. That's how he works. So with that said, I am going to hang this on up. Thank you everyone for coming on over to Q2A and listening in for a couple of hours today. Please go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to this channel. We have to really beat the algorithm on this because we have to be able to get these initiatives together. Again, these initiatives is what drives the ability to even have these conversations. If you're talking about prophecy and things of that nature, if you're talking about the word, here's the thing: two sticks coming together, right? Two sticks coming together. Let's get our sticks together. You could do so by supporting Q2UA. It's a nonprofit. It's a nonprofit organization. Our containers across the Atlantic. Now it just needs to sail down from Europe over to Africa and then over to good old Burkina Faso. So, with that said, family, you all have a blessed and highly favored day. Thank you again for coming through for Q2UA discussions. We're going to see what's not just happening in Kenya, we're going to see what's also happening around Africa and how it's going to affect the world. Again, only time will tell, but we've been pretty accurate in how we are able to understand and see these things. So, with that said, you all have a blessed day. And for all those, you'll see me on Covenant Awakenings on Monday. If anything pops off, if any other grumblings start to happen, because there are grumblings now regarding this ceasefire and anything that may take place between that Eastern Mediterranean nation and Iran, I will be on Covenant Awakenings. If there's anything that is an emergency, newsworthy, things of that nature. So, with that said, you all be blessed. Shalom and Salama.